Hey guys, it's your buddy 5 Bar Doom, and I want to talk to you a little bit about switching in doubles. I guess some of the things we can talk about are like, should you switch? When should you switch? What are these type of situations, right? So I guess like the one situation where you probably wouldn't switch in general is if you're playing with someone who's just like 100% goalie. You know what I mean? But I think the problem though is if you are one of these people where I'm a goalie, you really want to try to break yourself out of that, because like playing goalie is fun, and I know a lot of people just really enjoy playing goalie, but I definitely think you're kind of missing out on a lot of the fun of the game if you're not playing both positions. Like both positions are fun. Both are totally different. It's just a completely different experience playing foosball, playing front, playing back, and playing singles is a whole nother ball game also, which is absolutely the best. But as far as doubles, we're just talking forward and back. So like if you are a player that is exclusively playing goalie, even if you've been playing for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, I really encourage you to try to get up front sometimes, and you really just have to treat it like a new player getting into the game, like you might be a pretty good goalie, but if you don't play any forward, you really are just like a beginner in that forward position. And if you were a beginner, you basically just have to get up there and get some table time to, to practice it and kind of work on your shot, work on your pass. And even if you're at home or just practicing on the table with nobody, it's way different when you're playing against an opponent. And, a lot of it is the pressure that you face during a match. So I would just encourage all you goalies out there to try to get up front. DYPs, especially like this is where the Mega DYP is actually a really good format, because if you're playing a bunch of different matches throughout the night, hopefully you can find an opportunity to play some forward. When I get up to the table in a Mega, I try to ask the other person what they want to play. There's a lot of people that are just kind of like, they always play goalie. That's totally fine. But if somebody wants to play forward, I think it's pretty cool to give them the opportunity to play forward. It is more difficult to do that if you're in like a regular DYP or a Bring, where every match counts. Like in Mega's match, every match really doesn't count. You know what I mean? Unless they're doing the other type of Mega where they're not doing the playoff and they're only doing it based on points, then it super matters. So that maybe isn't the best time to switch. But let's talk about just kind of regular partners. I think one thing with switching is people don't necessarily want to switch, or let's say you're playing forward and you always play forward with your partner. Sometimes people will get kind of not an attitude, but they won't want to switch. There'll be like a lot of pride. They'll kind of feel like if you're switching, it's because they're not doing a good job. I think you have to try to get that out of your head as much as possible. And there's different reasons you can switch. Like one is like we were saying, if you have somebody who's maybe a newer player, or if you're a goalie learning how to play more forward, then it's kind of like a learning opportunity for switching, and I think you should try to break out of that goalie role and get more forward in. And it goes for forwards too. If you're a dedicated forward, like most of my time on the table, I got pretty decent at forward up front, at least like the rookie level, pretty quick. So a lot of times when I was playing in even like, Colorado State or whatever, these bigger tournaments, I was always playing forward. But for me, I'd like to play more goalie, so it is fun to get an opportunity to play more pits. So so you should try to find those opportunities. So that's like one reason, is from like a learning perspective and from a like growing your game perspective, it's good to switch. Now, if you are just have a regular partner where they, one person usually plays front, the other person usually plays back, sometimes people will feel like if you ask them to switch, they kind of take it personally, like, oh, I'm not doing a good enough job, and like, that type of thing. There's just people that don't like to switch. But I think, switching is really good because sometimes, like, even if like a person isn't necessarily like on paper a better forward, sometimes they'll just shoot better on a different goalie. You know what I mean? Or like, you get in the pits and maybe you start bricking somebody. If you're in goal and you're absolutely bricking somebody, your forward doesn't really have to play that good. A good example of when that might come up is if you have, for example, let's say you're facing a pull shooter and their pull is really slow. If you can just dead race a shot, a lot of times you can just shut somebody down 100%. Now, it doesn't come up that often, but it will come up kind of more than you think. Like, so I would recommend trying to race people once in a while and just to see, like, how slow are they? Like, can I actually race them? And if you can race them, maybe you're better off in the pits and it'll just be a longer match and you can kind of just take it slow. And if your forward's kind of taking a little while, that's okay. And, over time you can grind out a win. Or maybe you can start hitting some from the pits too. Like, you're blocking really well. You're going to get a bunch of 2-bar possessions. And assuming you're not shooting an aerial, maybe you can actually score from back there. But I think sometimes, you'll get two people that are forward, like one person's more of dedicated forward. The other person just maybe isn't as good of a forward, or like, on paper, they're not as good of a forward. I think I think one good time to switch is, for example, you're the forward. You're always playing the forward in this matchup. Now you get a few passes through, you're shooting, you're getting blocked, and the game is just starting to drag on, like, right out of the gate. Like, maybe you've scored one, missed like 5 or 6 shots. At that point, what's the harm in switching? You know what I mean? I think it's just nothing. There's nothing wrong with just trying it out. And sometimes, like, people just kind of overperform in the other position. Like this weekend, I'm playing with I'm playing with Brian. He's a local guy here in the Metro Detroit area. And as far as I'm concerned, like, we're both, forwards. I think he was saying he played really good in pits last week, so I think he's going to start out in pits this week. But, I would feel great switching and putting him up front, So I think, like, that's one good opportunity is, you start up front, match is going kind of slow. You've had, you start getting a decent amount of shots. You're not scoring that great. Might as well put the other guy up front, Something really fun way to play foosball, actually, that I really enjoy, that I did a couple times last week's draw, is switching every ball. Now, switching every ball, and I'm not talking about roto. Honestly, I don't like roto. I don't really resonate with that. But I do like switching every single ball. So when I say every ball, I mean every time a ball comes out of the table, no matter who's up front, who's in the back, you just switch. And that can, it sounds crazy, but that can be a really fun way to play. It can be, super fun, number one. Number two, sometimes you can just, it gives you that opportunity to have both people play both positions, and you just get those different matchups. And then, after a couple different balls, maybe you'll see, one person's actually performing way better up front. And then at that point, you can stop switching and just leave that person up front. So I think that's just a really fun thing to do. Personally, I've always wanted to try to win a title switching every ball. I think, like, me and Ryan Napton have tried that before, and we didn't make it through the whole tournament. You kind of start out with that in mind, and then it starts going south, and they think, like, all right, well, let's just stay in one of the configurations that we think is working better. But I think that would just be a really cool thing. I'm not sure. I don't think I've ever heard of anybody winning a tournament switching every single ball. But that would be a really fun title to have under your belt. You win expert doubles, or you win your rookie doubles title, and you switched every single ball. That's pretty neat. So it just kind of spices up the game. Actually, another thing about switching every ball is it kind of makes it harder for the other, I don't know if it's harder, it just makes it more confusing for the other team. Because, like, you're the goalie on the other team, you're kind of feeling out how the one person shoots, Well, if every other ball you're getting a different forward, sometimes they can't really get into your groove of your defense, and it just kind of adds a complication to it all that that could benefit you as a team that's switching every ball. I think another thing is, if you are trying to, if you have a person that's the dedicated forward and a goalie that's trying to play more, I'll do this with Beth sometimes. One way to do it would be you're playing a 2 out of 3, and you put the dominant forward up front for that first game, and if they win that first game, then you switch the second game and you let the other person try to win that second game. And then if that doesn't kind of goes south, you can let them play that game out, or maybe you wait until it gets in like a pretty bad situation, like you're down 3-0 or something, and you switch back. But either way, that second game can kind of be a throwaway game, and then you go back to your dominant configuration for that last game. So like as the good forward, it puts you in a position where you basically have to win 2 games straight. You don't really get the 2 out of 3 because you're sort of throwing a game away. But a lot of times if you're a good forward, you can do that, especially depending on the matchup, right? Like you walk up to the table, you're like, okay, we should win this match, most of the time. If that's the case, you can do like win the first game up front, cool, switch, hopefully win that second game. But if not, you can go back to the strong configuration for game 3. Or the opposite, like you can let the goalie play that first game up front, and then if they can't get it done, you switch, and then you got to win your 2 straight that way too. Playing with your strong configuration, the first game is a little better because from a winning perspective, because let's say you play the first game and you're in your best configuration and you lose it, well then you're like, well, I don't know that it makes a lot of sense to switch. Let's just stay like this and try to win the match with me up front, I don't know that I have a whole lot else to say about switching. I think it's just a really good idea to just be open to it. You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of times people, if you're a person that doesn't like to switch, I'd say give it a shot. Oh, I guess the other thing is, if you're in another situation is, let's say you're just in a regular DYP, and sometimes if you are in a regular DYP, I guess in Mega is the same thing. Any kind of DYP, you're the really strong forward, or maybe you're just a stronger player in general. You're better in both positions, and you're partnered up with a beginner. It can be really beneficial to just switch a lot. You know what I mean? And basically, like when you have the drop, start up front, try to score. When they get the drop, switch. And then you can always pull you got 2 timeouts. So you can pull if you get the ball, take a timeout. Or, maybe if the person has like a okay 3-bar, but not as good of a 5-bar, you can say okay, we're going to switch because they have the drop. I'm going to get in the pits because I'm a better blocker. If you get it on your 3, go for it and rip it. But if you get it on your 5, take a timeout and we'll switch. And I think that's a successful way to play a draw. I don't like to do it that much because it is kind of a pain. Like people don't like being switched around like that. It's not like the best experience, but I think from a purely winning perspective, DYPs, the kind of like hide the partner kind of thing is, can be a good strategy. But yeah, I guess that's about all I had. My thoughts on switching. I would just say, number 1, be open to it. Number 2, you can treat it as like a growth experience for you and your partner, and for both players too. Because if you're a really strong forward, it makes sense that you should get a little more experience in the pits. Obviously, if you're a goalie that never plays forward, I definitely think you should try to play some up front. And, you might surprise yourself as well. And DYPs, definitely you can consider switching. Especially on big points and stuff too. Like you play the whole match, score. It's 4-4. Your partner's getting drilled. You have your timeouts available. That's a great time to switch. Also, like if you're a good passing goalie from the pits, like when I play with Beth, we do a really good job passing. Like I'll hit really hard passes to Beth. She does a great job catching them. That's a perfect time to switch it up. I score one up front. We switch. I make a block. Now I have the ball in the back. Boom, I can pass it up to a 3, take a timeout, you switch. And then if you score it, you can just switch back and do that twice because you got 2 timeouts a game. So that can be really beneficial as well if you're good at passing out of the back. So yeah, I don't know. That's about it for today's video. What do you think about switching? Do you like switching? What type of situations do you like switching in? Do you have any other thoughts on switching? If so, I'd love to hear them in the comments. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.